Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is the Inclusion Initiative, our Let's Talk series, hosted by us, hosted by me, Grace Young Foster. I'm the founder and CEO of the Inclusion Initiative, where we are closing the opportunity gap for transracial adoptees and foster care alumni. So we had a really great LinkedIn Live event last week where we had my friends Stephanie and Anthony join us and talk about just the different perspectives of what our lived experiences are and how that is nuanced, and the experiences of our adoptions or our foster care journeys have so many parallels and overarching themes and arcs that are similar, but our perspectives on things and how we've experienced things are so different. And I have asked Stephanie to join me again and have welcomed her back. It's so great to see you again, Stephanie. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me again, Grace. This has been fun. It was really enjoyable last week to just have a conversation within adoptees, just flowing, like not having to explain much. Like everything just made sense and everybody was just nodding along, and that was really nice. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. And yeah, to your point, right? It was flowing. We were driving
Mhm,
because, right, we don't often get these spaces where it's for us, built
mhm,
by us, which is the whole purpose of the Inclusion Initiative and what we're trying to
mhm,
bring to our communities in all aspects of our lives. And our conversation was not finished. I wanted to keep talking, keep
mhm.
diving into our lived experiences. And so, before we get started, I just want to welcome everyone joining in, letting you know we are live streaming here, but we're also live streaming on YouTube. So go ahead and share that, check that out for folks, especially that are not on the LinkedIn platform yet. And I wanted to also encourage you to participate with us so you can like on all the different reactions on the event platform. You can share your love and comments in the comments section. And of course, if you have questions, I can see those come through. So feel free to type in any questions. And if at the end we have some time, we're going to dive into those as well. So, Stephanie, let's kick it off and would love to hear a little bit from you because of your really powerful story experience as a transracial adoptee. We didn't get to dive into all of that last time. So, would love to hear a little bit more from you about your journey and your lived experience.
Yeah, for sure. Again, like I said, thank you so much for having me back. I love having a conversation with you because it's just super easy flowing. And we talk about the really important things and the real things. And I love it. It's so great. I'm a transracial adoptee. My name is Stephanie. I'm from Haiti. I was adopted from Haiti when I was 4 months old and brought to Ontario in Canada. And I lived with two other adoptees. I had another brother from South Korea, Jason, and then I had another brother who was from Haiti as well, from Haiti. Sorry, his name was David, and I talked about it last week as well. He recently passed away about a year ago, so I'm sharing our story. Right, everything that I do and speak and discuss is about us, because I think it's really important that people understand how addiction can happen, how we need a sense of control, how we might feel a little bit lonely, especially in the 90s, right? We're adopted in a predominantly white environment, right? We were the only ones that were cultured, right, in Timmins. So I remember being the only, Black kid in my high school out of 1,000 to 1,200 kids, the only Black person, like that affects you, right? That is something that you cannot get away from, is being different. There's no other way to say it, to put it, right? You're going to stand out. And I think it's important to make sure that we are just fully supported when it comes to family, community, friends, and just feeling like you want to belong. But like belonging is such a strong word that I think that some people still don't understand what that means.
Mhm.
Um, right? I think that everybody wants to belong, but at what cost? And I think that we really need to explain that and talk about it and understand that adoptees have so many different feelings and emotions that they might be feeling, and I think that it's important to talk about them and be heard, right? We talked about this last week, and again, shut up and listen is going to be my bumper sticker, I think, is my favorite thing. um, because it's so true. It's so true and important that adoptees are not dismissed, are not feeling like they have to justify why they're here. This wasn't our choice. This
Mhm.
wasn't a decision that we made to go, hey, I'm going to put myself in a predominantly white environment and hope it goes well. Good luck. Right? So I think it's like it's really important to really understand that adoptees don't really have a choice but to be resilient. And we've talked about this before, is the word resilient is so complex. It's a word that we can discuss strength, right? It tells us and it shows us that we are strong and it's amazing, but again, at what cost? And we really need to dive deep into those conversations and understand adoptees a little bit more, because I don't believe that people understand the whole story. I think people understand that it's complicated, but not to this extent,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? We just talked about things where we are still figuring out what we're doing and who we are still as an adult,
Yep. So,
right? Like,
yeah, exactly. I know, I wanna pause there for a minute,
go
um,
ahead for sure.
because, this conversation, I really want, us to be able to dive in and share a little bit more on just these, parts of our lives that adoption really impacts, especially being transracially adopted, where you and I were both put in predominantly white communities with white parents, and your family were all of you were adopted kids of color.
Mhm. Kids of color, like
And so
kids
you
of
stood out,
color.
definitely
Oh
stood out
yeah,
when you're
yeah,
with your parents, right? And they're
most
like,
definitely.
Okay, there's two black children and a Korean child." Or they might not even have realized it was Korean, right? They're like the Asian
Just
child.
Asian, yeah.
Yeah.
Something different than white.
Yeah. And so even just walking down the street with your parents, you were on show essentially, because it's so odd, right, to see that. And same with me, when I was in my family with my white parents, but our family was made up of many different uh, races and ethnicities of kids, including white kids, right? We had foster kids, and I had adopted siblings and foster siblings that were just all sorts of different ethnicities and races, but also included white. But we were a lot. So
Mhm.
there were nearly 20
Yeah,
of us.
that's
So when all of us got together and were with our white parents, that you can imagine the stares and just, those things just they impact the way you move in the world.
mhm,
They impact the way you understand the world. It really shapes how you navigate, right? Social situations, life situations, personally, professionally, within the community, how you civically engage, all of this, it all impacts. And so would love to hear a little bit more about just some areas of your life where you feel like being transracially adopted like really stood out to you as an area of impact and like something where it maybe made you less comfortable, right, being who you were completely and wholly.
I get to choose just one.
I know you don't have to choose just one,
Mm.
but I feel like one might stand out in your mind.
um, yeah, the biggest one that comes to mind right now is relationships and friendships. I think that we assume that transracial adoptees, families, and friends are not racist. We believe that everybody's there for us and we've made these really wonderful connections. And some of these connections, there's racism in there. And there's no way to deny that and hide that. And I can see how that affected me when I was dating, right?
Mm,
If you're dating someone, if you're trying to date in a predominantly white environment and you're a person of color, you're seeing so many different characters come out. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Um, I think that some people want to be in a relationship with you because it's a fetish. That's a thing that's happened. It's very common. I've never been with a Black person before, and you hear that, and that's their pickup line. And you don't know where to go from that because I don't want to say amazing, let's hang out and see what's up. Like that's not the response that I want to a question or a statement like that. So you really have to watch and make sure that your friendships and relationships are people who want to be there for you as a human being, whatever the color of your skin may be. And because I feel like I was raised in a predominantly white environment, that's kind of what I knew. So when I moved away from my hometown and I tried to, figure out who I was as an adult, I was still hanging out in predominantly white environments. Like
mm,
that was the one thing that made sense to me and felt safe.
yep.
And there's racism that comes with that. There's racism in friendships, there's racism in dating. There's just such struggles to just exist. I think that's probably the best way that I can put it is just sometimes it is really tough to just exist.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. But like tell me about your feelings about it as well. Like how did you do?
Yeah, in terms of navigating relationships and
Mhm,
friendships, yeah, I have similar experiences and feelings. And when you talk about, racism that just comes out in these different scenarios, right? For me, it was like external racism happening to me and those microaggressions as well, but also internalized racism that I was practicing
mhm,
and really cultivating within myself because of the dominant white narrative that was telling me, right? You are different. That's not okay. Don't be different. Assimilate. If you
mhm,
assimilate and you look like us as much as possible, right? You can't change your face, but you can change certain parts about your face, right? So make your eyes look bigger. Like that's something I always struggled with
mhm,
was I wanted my eyes to be American. I
mhm,
hated my Asian eyes, and I had the biggest struggle. And I talk a little bit about this on my platform where I learned how to do makeup to make my eyes look bigger. I have it on now. I've grown to really love it, right? That's just
mhm,
part of like how I've, have learned to like love and embrace my Asian identity. But
mhm,
I'm also comfortable now without makeup being
Mhm.
on public platforms that I never would have 5 years ago, even
Mhm.
like 4 or 3 years ago. And so things like that, right? You just internalize because you're trying to assimilate as much as possible. Same thing goes for behavior, right?
Yeah.
Could never feel like I could be myself. I had to mimic what I thought was the popular behavior, always trying to fit in, right, with the popular people and never could because I was too
Never
different.
could. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly, it didn't stop me from trying. So I made a fool of myself a lot with friendships and relationships because I really put in so much effort because right, we lean in and we believe these patriarchal and white supremacy narratives of pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or if you do something enough or you practice enough or you work hard enough, you'll achieve it. You can be it. Well, guess what? I tried really, really, really hard to fit. I never.
Well, yeah, that's like true, but
Yeah, and I
there's
never.
another side of that.
Right, and it's because I am not a white person, and I was
Mhm.
trying to fit in to
Mhm.
white society as a white person
Mhm.
versus being accepted, right, by
Mhm.
my friends who are white as an Asian person, as myself. And I wish I would have spent so much more of my life doing the latter,
Mhm.
but I did so much of the former, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm a transracial adoptee and I was a foster care alumni
Mhm.
who was a person of color placed into a white community with white parents. So, in terms of like relationships and friendships, right, that would translate beyond childhood friendships
Mhm.
and it would translate beyond school relationships and friendships. And for me, like one of the biggest areas of impact for me was in the workplace because as many adoptees will tell you, the value and worth you put on yourself is right. How much can I contribute? How much can I give? How much can I do to be worthy of being here? And no matter your family circumstances, right? Some folks are placed into amazing families. Even if they're transracially adopted, they'll have amazing experiences.
Mhm.
Some will have okay experiences, and some will have really bad ones. And regardless, though, I'm hearing from many transracial adoptees and foster care alumni, we put a lot of our self-worth though into like what we contribute to the family because we know we inherently don't belong there as adoptees and foster care alumni. So we need to earn it,
Mm.
right? And that's
We
like
need to earn it.
you need to earn it. And it's part of that white supremacy, patriarchal, capitalistic, dominant narrative that filters into every home.
Mhm.
But when you're a person of color living in a white environment, it's like 10 times as loud.
Mhm.
And then when you're an adoptee, like you're not literally flesh and blood of that family, it's even louder, right? And so we put a lot of, at least for me personally, I will speak for myself. I put so much of my own self-value, worth, my identity was in what I achieved in my career at work within the organizations I was able to, be hired into, et cetera, et cetera. And for me personally, that's really all I really had that was stable, that was constant. It, like you said, it was a comfortable place for me to be in because I knew like what to expect. And I had gotten like that normal feedback that everyone gets, right? Because I worked extremely hard. I was outputting so much. I I started working when I was very young. Like from 8, 9 years old, I was working, like
Wow.
literally working outside the home. So, from paper routes to fast food to retail, all the things.
All of it. Yep.
Hard
Yep.
for me to remember a time when I wasn't when I didn't have a job. And so that was where a lot of my self-worth and value was. And gosh, it hit home for me really hard as I got further along in my career and then started realizing, right, how I navigated relationships in the workplace and also my lack of connection and relationships outside of the workplace was really impacting how I was able to progress and, achieve the things that I wanted to achieve. And as a transracial adoptee and former foster youth, my relationship with relationships was super complicated. I had learned enough and had worked through enough, right, where I could have healthy relationships, but it took me a long time to trust you. Took me a long time to get there with you, to have a relationship that wasn't based off of what I felt like I could give you.
Mhm.
So, in my teenage years and into college especially, I don't know if you experienced this, Stephanie, but the friendships I formed, like, I clung onto, and I clung onto them by being the giver. So anything I could give you, I was giving you my time, my resources, my loyalty, because I wanted to stay your friend.
Mhm.
And that I found like translated when I started um, getting into corporate jobs,
Yep.
which I was really fortunate to be able to do. But when I started getting into corporate jobs, it's the same kind of relationship pattern that I had. Like this company, I think, wants me, right? I want to belong here. I don't want them to kick me out, right? I want to be a part of this work community and I want to fit in. And so I got to provide everything I can provide to show that I matter, that I belong here, that I'm worthy of this job. And that holds so many triggers, like for me, in how I navigate experiences with my bosses or with my peers, like all of that. And so, I'll stop there and just see what thoughts you have about that. And if you have like similar experiences, even outside of the workplace, where that kind of thought pattern and behavior showed up for you.
Um, I think that we're gonna have to make a game where it's just little anecdotes of things that we've dealt with, and we have to guess whose like trauma it is. Because you're saying so many things, and I'm like, yep, been there. Yep, that's happened to me. I could think of 5 instances where this has happened to me. I could think of 6 examples where this has happened to me. Like they're just the more that I speak to adoptees, the more that I understand just why I am the way that I am. I think that it explains a lot in terms of what as adoptees we have to go through. There's a lot of things that you're saying that I just remember having struggles and going back to be white, right? The joke for me in high school and was like I forgot that I'm black because I feel white, right? I don't realize that I'm different until I see myself in the mirror. And it's a really funny party line. It's a funny one. Oh my gosh, she doesn't think she's black. Ha ha ha, that must be so funny. And then maybe like a few years ago, I was like, well, there's got some red flags written all over that. And the fact that it was just the party line, the thing that I said all the time, the things that people understood, um, is so interesting. And I think that when transracial adoption is happening, I think that one of the things that they do say is make sure that they try to blend in, make sure they try to assimilate, make sure you don't treat them any differently. And I have questions with that. I have questions and concerns on how how we're supposed to function in terms of not being able to be ourselves. Right? I think that my relationships at school and personal and work, there's always these times that I remember that I'm different and I don't know what to do with that. You know, I remember one of the things for me is my hair is
Mhm.
a lot of people aren't used to Black people's hair, or so it's just so different and they want to touch it and they're just so curious and they want to know what it's about. I have no problems with that, but like ask me first. Right? Like ask me if you can touch my hair. And I know that Black people in general, whether you're adopted or not, have had to deal with that. If you're in a predominantly white environment and someone's never seen your hair type, they're going to ask, they're going to touch. And sometimes it's like, ooh, can I touch it as they're touching it? And you're like, well, yeah, I don't even know why we're asking at this point because we've already reached that, right? And I remember myself when I was working in corporate, right? I was a manager for a company for quite some time. And I remember always when I did my hair, I made sure that it wasn't too Black. And I don't know if that is something that people will understand who aren't Black. You know what I mean? So, what I mean by that is I didn't have a fro. I would try to wear wigs or weaves to make it look like I had really long, loose curls or straight hair. I wanted to just fit in.
Yeah.
Not even blend in at that point. I think it was just fit in.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't want to have braids in because that people ask questions, people want to touch the braids. So there were a lot of hairstyles that I really had to focus on and go, I don't know if this is the place for it. I don't know if this is a place for my braids because people are going to ask, people are going to want to touch, people have questions. So even just those thoughts of just your hairstyle and what scenario you're in, what situation you're in where you have to kind of watch, that was a thing in school, right? My mom had learned how to do 4C hair. That's the texture that type of hair that we have. So she had learned how to do that. So I had
Mm.
really cute hairstyles all the time. I had little beads at the end and cornrows, and I was looking real cute, you know? And people thought it was really cute too, that they would love to touch it. And it's like, I can't even count how many times when I had a new hairstyle, how many times it was touched. Like, I just don't have a number for you. It happened all the time. And we're not even talking about just my peers, we're talking about teachers, right? We're talking about a whole entire community who has never seen this type of hair before that are just so curious and want to touch it. I remember having to skip school one day because I was asked to be the guinea pig at a hairdressing school because they had never done Black people's hair before. So I missed a day of school. My mom and I went to this hairdressing school, and all day I had my hair just like manipulated by a bunch of people who had never touched my hair texture before.
Wow.
And I don't think I remember that until not long ago, where I was like, oh my gosh, I remember like being excused from school that one day because people needed to understand what that type of texture hair is.
Wow.
Right? Like it's it's crazy. It's crazy to think about it. And I just remember it being such a painful, traumatic experience for me because no one knew what they were doing.
Mhm.
No one knew what they were doing. And I just was sitting there in this chair with like 4 to 5 people in my hair trying to do things, trying to do a braid, trying to do a cornrow, and my mom slowly trying to explain to them what to do. And I don't remember being asked if that was okay. Like, did I want to skip school one day and be the guinea pig for a hairdresser? Like, I don't know. But it was, you're new, educate them.
Yeah.
That is your job.
Yep.
Right? As a teacher now, I want to educate. That's my jam. That's what I love to do. At 7 years old, I don't know if that's my job.
No, and I think addressing that point, right? This like translates to like folks of color in the workplace, folks of color in the community
Mhm.
in general, but also specifically for us as transracial adoptees, as people who were in foster care, as people who were placed right into these communities that don't reflect us or celebrate us or
Mhm.
understand us, right? We're often um I would say we're often expected, like we're expected to share these parts of ourselves that we don't want to share, that
Mhm.
we should have autonomy over.
Mhm.
And it's not our job to tell you the the deepest, darkest life experiences that we have, to educate you because you're a parent or because you work in the system or because you're just curious, right? In fact, it should be flipped. It should be people that don't have these lived experiences, it's their job to become educated by finding the resources they need to find. There's plenty out there, right? There's a lot of studies, there's a lot of academic papers, there's a lot of folks who have been working in this space for a long time where they can get that technical knowledge and expertise. But at the same time, right, it's also their responsibility to honor the lived experiences that we have. But it's not us as those people with lived experience. It's not we should not be expected or required to educate you. And it's your job as someone, if you're an ally, you're a supporter, if you care about the communities, if you're thinking about transracially adopting, like it's your job to build those relationships. It's
Mhm.
your job to create spaces where we feel welcomed and authentically supported to be able to share our stories and lived experience how we want to share them. It's
Mhm.
not our job to educate you and create that safe space for you. It's vice versa. So,
100%.
yeah, I mean, totally hear what you're saying. And like it that translates throughout every aspect of our lives. So socially, within our families, within our communities, within our workplaces, in our schools, you name it, even in our girlfriend groups, right? Or guy friend groups or non binary groups, like however you identify as a person, right? It's still, it translates throughout all of those aspects. And even on a, like when you have a close personal relationship with somebody, like you and I talked about, right? How we have partners and we've been able to create that community for ourselves alongside our partners, right? Of that personal connection and belonging within a community that really truly where we can be who we are. But it takes a long time for us to build that trust and to
Mhm.
build that sense of safety where we can show up as our true selves. And, you know, in places like the schools that we are educated in the workplaces where we're employed, that takes even longer because we don't have that personal relationship with you where, we're going to be more open, right? To sharing and being more vulnerable. So, in those types of public settings, where we're not sure what the safety is, right? To be able to share these lived experiences, it's even more critical for those that want to be allies to us and supporters for us, that want to practice true inclusion, belonging, and equity.
Mhm.
It's super critical for you to take that hard look at what are you doing to ensure that this is possible for our community, for transracial adoptees and people that have experienced foster care. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that you feel like I'm highlighting your point.
100%. 100%. It even at work, it's so interesting. I remember sometimes at my desk, I would have a family picture, and that always raises questions, right? Because people are curious as to what's going on here. There's some Asian, there's some white, there's some black, what's going on? And people have questions. So I remember putting it away.
Yep.
Right? There's times where I can't hide the fact that I am different and that I look different from my family. We talked about this when, you're walking down the street as a family. People are asking questions. I remember getting interesting and weird questions or comments or stares just walking down the street with my dad.
Yep. Same.
Right? I'm 10 or whatever, and I'm like, hanging out with my dad, just walking down the street. We're going shopping or something, and people are judging because the first thing that they think of is not necessarily adoption.
And not a father-daughter relationship.
Not a father-daughter relationship, and not going, oh, he adopted her.
Yeah.
Right? That's not what they think of. So I remember getting those stares and just being really scared about walking around with my dad and watching and changing my behavior. So I didn't want people to, sorry,
Get the
the
wrong impression.
ambulance are super
Yeah.
loud, but get the wrong questions, get the wrong comments, get the wrong situation, and just being so embarrassed. So there are times where I just think of, you can't hide from your differences. And I wish that people understood that.
Yeah.
From your whole entire life, from being adopted, being brought to Canada to today. I'm still figuring things out. I'm still
Mhm.
getting those interesting looks, right? My husband is white. So that's an interesting thing where people are like, what's the deal? Interracial? What? Right? It's still so new. So I just remember getting a lot of stares. And that's what I think where the anxiety really started for me when I was a child, was just having to be prepared and on guard of the stares that were coming.
Mhm.
I assume you probably dealt with the same thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
have any Korean siblings?
I do have Korean adopted
Okay.
siblings. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's so interesting that you had one as well. How old was he when he was adopted or brought into the US, I should say?
He was brought into Canada at the age of 10 months old.
Yeah, Canada,
It's okay.
sorry.
It's okay. We're neighbors. It's all good. Yeah, he was brought to Canada when he was 10 months old. We were all really, really young.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, like, it was a range. The siblings came at, a range of ages, but mostly there were 6 of us, and most of us were older when we came. So this is very interesting. It's different. It's different than a lot of the Korean adoptees you hear about that came over as infants. Yeah. Yeah. But, I wanted to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
and I will share too, what is the what is something that you think is really important in terms of, um, when people think about how transracial adoption really impacts every facet of our lives? What's like that one takeaway from what you shared that you want people to walk away with?
It's a really good question. And I have to say that I love that you ask it, because I think that people want to people want to understand and hope to know how to help. but just don't know how. And for me, I think with all of the relationships with work and family and community and all these things is having a safe space. And I think that everybody's safe space looks a little bit different. I don't necessarily mean a safe space where it's just your parents. I don't just mean just a friend, right? I just, whatever the situation may be, to have a safe space where you're allowed to cry and grieve and go through all of the emotions that an adoptee goes through that might
Mhm.
not make sense. And that's a really hard one because people might not understand the struggles. People might not understand why you're grieving. And you don't have to. I just need you to be a space where I can feel comfortable enough to be myself. And
Mhm.
that's the thing that we talked about today is all these places where we couldn't be ourselves, where we had to watch, where we were there was always eyes on us and we had to be careful and assimilate and try to belong and not.
Yep.
And we should have had a safe space to be able to talk about the stuff that no one wants to talk about,
Mhm.
the stuff that no one understands. I just need you to be safe.
Yeah.
That's any adoptee. I
Mhm.
think is safety is the biggest thing. Because I think when you don't feel safe, it gets dangerous. It gets really dangerous. And I know that, I know that firsthand. I know that from my brothers. I know that just from speaking to other adoptees. You need a safe space, no matter what that looks like for you. And you can be the judge of that. But a safe space is needed, which is why I believe in what you're doing so much. Because if I had a platform where I was like, life as an adoptee and figured out ways and tips and tricks to get through the world, oh Lord, I'd be
Mhm.
cruising. I'd be thriving. I would be taking in all of that knowledge. And I think it would be answering a lot of questions that I had in my head. And it would just make it just feel okay to have those thoughts and those questions.
Yeah, and where you feel seen and heard, and you
Mhm.
feel like you have real support, and not, right, just these cookie cutter things that really don't apply to you because you've had to navigate the world a lot differently than what those cookie cutter things were built for. Yeah,
Mhm.
so, no, I appreciate you saying that, and, with the work that we're doing at the Inclusion Initiative, we are very conscious of building these resources and like this community with transracial adoptee and foster youth alumni voices at front and center. So we've been asking the community, right? What do they want? What do they need? What are they missing? What do they actually experience that they're not able to share? And the feedback I keep getting is like, nobody's asked me this before about my professional experience, especially. Like, nobody's asked me these questions before. Why? It's 2023. Why are we not asking these questions?
Why? That's my
Why?
favorite. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, one of the like really interesting, but also concerning findings from, these questions that we're doing. So we did like a survey that you've seen. Thank you so much for your support
Loved
with
it.
that. And right, this is specific to the workplace, but I think it really is telling of our community as a whole, of what we experience in society. So in our communities, with our friends groups, et cetera, right? But the survey respondents, who are all either transracial adoptees or they are foster care alumni, they the amount of the amount of not being heard and seen that they've expressed in the survey is pretty staggering.
Mm.
And what I'll share with you is that, well, first of all, 100% of them want a space specifically for them. So this is like, we're not making this stuff up. This is not just Stephanie's opinion, and it's not just me, Grace's opinion about how we want to be supported and like what we need, right? Like, we need, to your point, this safe space. We need this community. We need these outlets where we can truly be seen and heard, especially by others that have these lived experiences as well. And so 100% said they want this. So, I mean, that's what we're doing, right? At the
That's not
Inclusion
at
Initiative.
all surprising.
Yeah, we're building it. Great. We're meeting that need.
Right?
Great. But also, to delve further, 65% have said that the barriers that they have faced being transracial adoptees or foster care alumni, so these are predominantly people of color that are
Mhm.
taking the survey, the barriers that they have faced, they feel 65% of them feel like these have impacted them in gaining opportunity professionally and like building wealth for themselves, all that kind of stuff. And I think, you and I here today, when we're talking through how transracial adoption is really impacting every facet of our lives. Well, yeah, it makes sense. Duh. Yeah. Yeah, duh. It is impacting us in our careers, like, because it impacts how we navigate
Mhm.
relationships and how we navigate, being kind of invisible in these spaces that we're in because we're trying to assimilate and fit in so much, right? So to me, that is really
Mhm.
concerning. And it's why I dreamt up this thing for us, this place for us to address this.
Mm.
But the one takeaway I want people to walk away with from our conversation today is like why like that statistic exists. One of the reasons why is because what we talked about, right, with how we navigate relationships. It takes us a long time to build trust. We've been burned a lot. If you've been given up by your birth family for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what reason, that trauma's still there, even if it's for a good reason, right? If you are like me and you've experienced multiple homes, so you were given up multiple times, that really impacts your ability to navigate and trust in relationships. For you, right? You have experienced things in your family and your siblings have experienced things where that trust system is broken multiple times, where you don't feel safe, right? You don't feel belonging. And so in these external environments, right, where you said like you talked about control, like wanting to like feel that control, right? We have zero control in the workplace, but what we can control is how close we let people get in the workplace or in that community group or in that friend group. Like, we can control that. So it takes us a long time to build authentic relationships where there is the two-way mutual authenticity, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times we will go into a work relationship being what that person wants us to be, what we think that person wants us to be, what we think that boss wants us to be, or what the customer wants us to be, never being our authentic selves because that wasn't welcome. That wasn't
Mhm.
allowed as a transracial adoptee or
Yep.
foster care alumni.
Mhm.
So in the workplace, it's hard for us, right, to build those authentic relationships. And that's really important for people, professionals, employers, bosses, entrepreneurs, anyone that's involved with creating more equity and inclusion and belonging, that's really important for you to remember for our community. And it's important for you to have a way to help us navigate that and address that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've lacked that resource our entire lives. Because we constantly are trying to assimilate still, or trying to be who we think we have to be to stay in that place and be welcome in that place. So that's like the one takeaway that I want to share. And I really appreciate yours too, because they're
so good.
they're in
Like,
parallel, right? They're in parallel. That
yeah,
safe space
yeah.
is so important for us to relationship build and be authentic.
It's interesting because I think of the adoptees that I could think of that I've spoken to recently. And I don't think I've met one that hadn't dealt with people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something to say to that. Like, I feel like that is so interesting. And I think we need to like dive deeper into that, is understanding what people pleasing is, right? And for you, like you said it, I put my worth and my time and my energy for other people.
Yep.
I wanted to belong. I wanted to stay here. So I want to make sure that there's a reason why I'm staying here, and you got to be the best possible person that you could be to everybody else but yourself.
Yep, exactly. Right. Because I'm the person that least mattered, which is so backwards. Like, I should matter the most. Because if you're not whole and healthy inside and for yourself, how can you be that for everybody else? Well, you can for a short while, but it's cracks, which you and I have talked about separately on our platforms too.
100%. Yeah.
And I'm gonna just share. So this is the survey link. If you're interested in looking at like the questions and just the whole purpose of the survey that the Inclusion Initiative is doing, that's the link. Please check it out. But while folks are doing that, I want to close this out with asking you, Stephanie, and I will share too, but just asking you, what is it that you want and that you need as a transracial adoptee that you feel like is the support that you're looking for? So you talked about safe spaces, and that can absolutely be your answer, but I'm curious to know.
Safe space, huge for every question, but I think my other one would be, I don't think I've ever met an adoptee who has told their story and just gotten no reply back in terms of how they should be feeling or what they think, or making them feel bad, or gaslighting or dismissing. Just stay quiet while I tell my story. Right? And that's such a thing that I've dealt with a lot, is people asking the questions, people asking about the trauma. I tell them about the trauma, and then they have to defend it. I don't want to defend my trauma.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to defend my trauma. And I think that people need to understand what that means. And I think a lot of people can go, you know what, I'm probably guilty of that, where I've probably had an answer to something when I should have just listened. Same thing goes for adoptees. Right? We have this narrative that adoptees should be thankful and only thankful because that's what people have told us to do.
Yeah.
There's no other way to swing that, right? So if I was to say all of these things with my trauma in the past, and there's many stories, we can go on. Don't feel like you have to defend my trauma. Right? As soon as something happens, and if you complain, it's not even complain, you're just talking. Well, then it's like, I'm going to defend your parents. Well, think about that way. Think about it this way. I have. Don't you worry. I've thought of it all different ways. But you've asked me the question. I'm explaining to you, I'm replying to you, and scene. Right? Don't make me defend myself.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine any other adoptee who isn't feeling that is ringing true, because I've seen it, I've heard it, I've done it, where we all have had to defend ourselves.
Yeah. And it still is happening.
Still today, as an adult, right, in control, still having to defend myself.
Yep. Past tense and present tense.
Still, like, it's right, did when I was a kid, do what I still have to do it as an adult. Like you said at the beginning of this conversation, is it follows us everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
in every aspect and part of our lives. And I think it's time for us to do something about it and educate. Now it's my time to educate. Now I want to educate. You know what I mean? I don't want to do it when I'm 7 in gym class, but I can do it now on a platform specifically for it, where I want to share my knowledge. I want to share my experiences so people can learn from it. Pick and, pick and choose your time to educate. It's now.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
For me, I would say the support that I want is really that place, that space where we have each other to lean on, but also can uplift one another and provide the things for each other in the ways that we can, that we never got
Mm-hmm.
throughout our entire journeys, because we were never understood or never belonged or didn't really have, right, that family that we needed, that community that we needed, that network that we needed.
Mm-hmm.
That is like a huge support that I was looking for many years and could never find. And I'm really appreciative that you're now a part of that community with me.
Don't make me cry. It's the
I'm like,
end, Grace. What are you doing? We're
even
doing so
yeah,
well.
yeah, I know. But like off camera,
Yep.
right? We're having some conversations where I'm like, yes, finally, there are folks who like just get me, and we can make so much more progress because you just get me
Mm-hmm.
to where I can move to, right? That healing and building
Mm-hmm.
and thriving.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's what I continue to want. It's what we're building here
What we're
today.
doing.
It's why the Inclusion Initiative exists. And so we're just going to continue doing that work
Yep.
together.
100%.
So, yes, I really appreciate you being on with me today. We are going to wrap up here. And for everyone that wants to follow you, continuing to listen to your inspiring and beautiful voice, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn under Stephanie Veneri. I post a lot of things there. I recently just posted a podcast that I recently did speaking about my story and my brother's story with adoption and addiction. So have a listen there. I'm having a really in-depth conversation with a friend of mine who's also a transracial adoptee. It's deep, it's heavy. So take care of you if you're going to listen to it. I want to make sure that you're feeling safe. That's super, super important to me, is that these conversations that we have are heavy. These are not light and breezy conversations, no matter if we want them to be, they just aren't. These are people trying to tell you who they are and explaining to you who they are. And it's just time to listen. And Grace, I want to thank you for who you are and for what you're doing. I'm not going to make you cry or anything, but I do have to say, I'm so excited for your platform, because I think as we talk about a safe space, I think this will be a safe space. If this is going to be a spot where people can go and get all these answers and understand that the things that they're feeling is valid, I'm safe. That's 100% what this is about. And this is why you're doing it. You're doing this for past self to feel safe and for others to feel safe. And I think that you should be extremely proud of what you're doing because
Oh.
you're nailing it. And I'm so excited to be part of it. And anything you need from me, amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, right, exactly. Because we need to see people like us,
Mhm,
people that we can relate to.
mhm,
And it's great, right, seeing heroes and people put on, the people that are put on pedestals, like we need to see those too, right? Things to strive for, or things to look up to, but we
mhm,
also need to see each other in real time
mhm,
and support each other in real time. Like,
mhm,
this is real life, you know? I can't relate to the person that's featured on Forbes that might be an adoptee right now. That's not helping me. What helps me is finding people in community in real time that are going through things that I'm going through,
mhm.
where I can lean on and find resources and support with. So, yeah, no, I really appreciate you saying that. And we're all, in my opinion, like, we're all like heroes in our community and in society because of what we bring to the table as human beings,
Mhm,
and how so many of us are working to make the futures better for our kids and for the next generation
mhm,
rising up, because we refuse to let people go through the things that we went through for
mhm.
so long, right? So,
100%. This
yeah.
is this is for some people a do or die situation. There's no ways to swing that, right? Like some people are getting out alive and some people aren't. And that is serious and heavy.
Yeah.
And we need to feel safe.
Yeah, and I know you talk about that a bit on your platform, and I
Mhm.
can't wait to continue to follow you and your storytelling and just your important journey and work through all of this. So, thank you for being a
Thank you.
part of this amazing community. And I'm Grace Foster. You can also find me on LinkedIn under Grace Young Foster. We're at theinclusioninitiative.com. Please reach out to us if you want to get a hold of me or Stephanie. I will gladly get you in touch with her. So please reach out if you have trouble finding any of her handles. And again, great to have you on. And until next time, bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.